CPAC was mostly worthless. The second day was a complete throwaway. Nothing worth covering happened on the second day, Saturday, which is good because I was in bed with a fever from my second coronavirus vaccine dose. I wouldn't have been able to cover any of it anyway. Fortunately, in a sense, there was nothing worth covering. But one theme that sort of wound its way throughout Friday and Saturday and Sunday is that CPAC attendees were unwilling to accept that Donald Trump lost. We are, just a few days short of December, January, February, March. We're days from being 4 months beyond the election, which Joe Biden easily won, more easily than the margin by which Trump won in 2016. And CPAC speakers, I guess because they're still sort of kowtowing to Trump, placating Trump, will not admit that Trump simply lost. Let's go through some examples. Here is Tom Fitton from Judicial Watch. This is one bizarre guy with some kooky ideas saying Trump had the votes on election day, but vote totals changed as ballots were counted. Can you imagine? Take a listen.
On election day, President Trump had the votes to win the presidency. These vote totals were changed because of unprecedented and extraordinary counting after Election Day.
Now, in a literal sense, what Tom Fitton says is true. Votes that were cast by Election Day were counted after Election Day, legally, as always happens with absentee ballots. And as those votes were counted, the results changed. Yet that is, in a technical sense, it is true. He wants you to believe something illegal happened. Of course, it didn't. Then Larry Kudlow, Donald Trump's former economic advisor, talking about polling from last October. We have ballots that we counted now. You talk about polling beforehand, but Larry Kudlow is talking about polling from before the election.
Comments on that. I was interested last October. A Gallup poll said 56% of Americans believed at that time that they were better off than they were 4 years ago, despite the fact that they had been in the pandemic. They still believed that they were better off. That's a Trump thing. That's a Trump thing.
And then Josh Hawley gets a standing ovation after reminding the crowd that he voted not to certify the election results on January 6th. This was part of what incited the violent riot. And the crowd gives Josh Hawley a standing ovation.
You know, on January the 6th, I objected during the Electoral College certification. Maybe you heard about it. I did. I stood up.
I guess the crowd believes that they are being principled in some way by giving Josh Hawley this standing ovation for an action, Hawley's action, much like Ted Cruz and others, that melded with Rudy Giuliani's trial by combat thing and all this other stuff. And of course, Trump's speech saying, let's go to the Capitol, and led to a riot, the crowd cheering it. Then Matt Schlapp, who runs the American Conservative Union, that's the organization that organizes CPAC, saying that what happened in November, it was an unconstitutional power grab.
In leaving CPAC, it would be do all you can to any member that we have any influence over to explain to them that it's unacceptable to have this unconstitutional power grab on elections, so that what we saw this election will be what you will see every single election. And we have to fight it. Now,
it wasn't an unconstitutional power grab. It was that Joe Biden won. They still can't accept it. And why should they? Trump still hasn't accepted that Hillary got more votes than him in 2016. It's been 5 years and Trump doesn't accept those results. So, of course, they're not going to accept the results from almost 4 months ago. Since they think they won, they won't be changing their strategy either. And here's House Minority Leader, gives me great pleasure to say Minority Leader, Kevin McCarthy, laying out the plan.
Listen, We're going to continue to do exactly what we did in the last election.
Okay. I mean, if you think you won, I guess you do the same thing. And they are also, as we talked about earlier in the show, planning to suppress more votes. They're already scheming to do it. We gave you a report earlier in the show about 253 different bills and measures to suppress voting across 43 states. Republicans believe they won, I guess. Certainly they don't want to change their strategy, but they didn't suppress enough votes, and that's what they're going to try to do. Now, one last hilarious moment. This is my favorite. Right Side Broadcasting is one of these online-based right-wing channels. I don't think they're as big as Newsmax and OAN, but they're big enough that they're worried about getting sued. And CPAC was rife with anti-science discussions related to COVID and rife with anti-fact discussions related to the election. Right Side Broadcasting, during a CPAC panel discussion about the election, cut away to read one of the funniest disclaimers I've ever heard to try to protect themselves from legal liability.
3 different states, 42,000 votes, 45,000 votes, something like that, and we would have had an electoral college vote of 269 to 269.
There's a lot of sensitive topics that are being talked about right now. We want everyone to do your own research in regards to what they're talking about in this discussion right now, anything with the election or anything like that. So it's important to do your own research. I know there's several outlets here that are able to completely broadcast all of this content for you with any disclaimer at all. But unfortunately, here at Right Side Broadcasting, we must jump in here and put a small disclosure that we want you to do your own research, and it's very important that you do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Just quickly, although we are broadcasting these speakers, we want to provide you with that. It does not mean that we necessarily believe or support all of their beliefs of every single speaker talking today. So make sure that you research everything. You talk to your healthcare physicians, whether it's regarding COVID or medical information, and if it's election related, just look it up. Look everything up, and we are just not endorsing any speakers for the event. Again, we are simply broadcasting these speakers.
Talk to your healthcare physicians. There's so many election lies and so many bogus medical claims being made at CPAC that Right Side Broadcasting has to cut away and issue this absolute gold disclaimer. And at one point, they also they interrupted Mike Lindell from My Pillow during an interview. I'm not even going to play it because it's so stupid, but they interrupted and said, we have to be really careful, Mike, because we could lose our entire thing. And Mike Lindell said, oh, you can find that clip if you want like an extra bonus clip. But this is where my coverage of CPAC ends. We're going to take a quick break. We'll do more vaccine stuff after the break and many more things. Glad you're with us on this first show in March 2021.